Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a Copic tutorial on coloring hair. Hair is one of the biggest problems that people have coloring. I always get tons and tons and tons of emails saying if I could please do more tutorials on coloring hair. And I know where it can be a little bit more intimidating, but once you get it down, it's one of my favorite things to color. So I'm using this really cute stamp set from Hanglar and Wings, and I'm going to be using 4 different colors. So I'm going to be using E29, E25, E23, and E21. You can replace any color combination that you have as long as you're using the 4 different shades from dark to light and they coordinate. Go ahead and you can swap out. Just make sure you're using the same color. So if I'm using my E29, make sure you're using the darkest color. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've stamped my image in Memento Desert Sand ink so I can get that no line effect. And the reason why I like doing the no line effect when I'm coloring hair or when I'm coloring images that have a lot of the shadows already in there, and you could see here that this stamp has a lot of those little lines. I don't like coloring them black, especially if I'm using a lighter color, because then it really shows, and I like to put the shadows in myself. So what I want to share with you is how to still get all that texture and how to keep all of those same lines, but using them with your Copic colors instead. So instead of I color normally from dark to light, but normally when I color hair, I skip my darkest color, because once you get that darkest color down and you add all the shadows that you see here, if there's a lot of detail in the stamp, you could lose those lines and then not know where to put either shadows or to add more hair lines for texture. So that's why I like to skip a color going down first. So I'm going to start with my E25. And I'm going to color one section at a time. So I'm going to start up here. So I always start with the part. So I'm just going to come down and I'm going to very lightly just trace some of the lines that are there. And then I'm going to come up where the ponytail gathers. So you want your shadows to be where the hair gathers and on the bottom of some of the hair strands. So as long as you have a lot of little white gaps, and we'll get to that in just a second, then you're going to get that really texturized hair. So now I'm going to go ahead and move down and take my E23. And you notice here where I stopped with that E25. Well, now I'm going to continue that line with each new lighter color. So I'm just going to bring it down just a little bit more, and it's going to start to fade, kind of like when I do pleats. And I like going up and making a couple of extra little strands when there isn't any. So that way it kind of gives me a direction when I color a stamp that does not have any lines in between. So then I could kind of make it up as I go. So there's a lot of little white gaps still in between. So now I'm going to go back with my darker color. So now I'm going to go back with my E29 because now I can see those lines that are on the image and that I've added some detail to. So now I want to go back and add some shadows where the shadows should be. So right where the hair gathers at the ponytail, I'm just going to add a couple of little flicks going up, not very many because I don't want to get too dark, but I do want to add some of the shadows there. So, and then the same thing going down from the part. So I'm just going to add a little flick, and wherever my marker stops, that's where I'm going to stop. I don't want to sit there and go over it and really add so much color where it gets really hard to either get some highlights out of it, because I can always go back and add a little bit more E29 later. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back with my E25, pull out some of that E29, just add a couple little flicks here. A little bit of color goes a long way with Copics. So just pulling it through a little bit more. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my E23. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to pull out, softening up that line, those with the harsher colors, with the darker colors. Still leaving all of those little white gaps in between, because those are going to be my natural highlights. So now when I take my E21, I don't want to blend out any of that all the lines that we've just created, we want to keep that for texture. So I'm just going to take my E21 and I'm just going to do one swipe over very softly and fill in the rest of the white areas. That way all of those lines are still there. It still looks like that hair texture, and it's fully colored in now, and you have all those natural looking white highlights that were now the E21. So if you feel like you need it to be a little bit darker, you can always go back and add some more E29. I don't, since I went really light with the clothing, I don't want to get really, really dark with my hair, so I'm going to take my E25 and I'm just going to come through and add a couple more little strokes here and there just to give it a little bit more texture and a little bit more depth. And I'm actually really happy with the way that looks, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it. So now we're going to go ahead and do the little ponytail from behind. So I'm going to, again, start with my E25, and right where the hair is coming out of, right behind her ear, I'm going to make a couple of little lines going down, and also going all the way down closest to her head, because that is where the darkest point's going to be. And then I'm going to come up through a couple of these little strands towards the bottom. And then I'm going to take my E23, pull those colors, pull the E25 down a little bit, just going back through, adding some of that color, but still leaving all of those white gaps. Now I'm going to go back with my E29. Add a couple more little strokes here of this color, adding that little bit of depth. And then I'm going to go back with my E25, pulling it through. And a little bit more down here. And then with my E23, I'm just going to come up along the side of some of these little lines, just because I still want that white to be in there for our highlights. Now I'm going to take my E21 and just make sure everything is filled in. And I'm going to go back with my E25. And I'm actually going to go back with my E29 a little bit and add a couple more little dark strokes right behind here, since her hair's, this part of her hair is behind her and we're seeing it come out from the front, but this back here we want it to be a little bit darker, so it really looks like it's from behind. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the other side. So I'm going to start with my E25, and again just starting at the part and then coming up from the ponytail. And I had gotten a question where you don't know where to add these lines, if there aren't any, or if you have trouble seeing them if you're using the no line ink or the desert sand. If you just follow the line from here and here and just go in that same direction all the way over, you can't go wrong, because you're following that line that the illustrator has already provided us. And as long as you go in that direction, it's going to look believable. So that way you can get all of those extra textures and definition just by using those as guidelines. Just go in that same direction. So now I'm going to take my E23 and bring the color out a little bit more. Still leaving all of those white gaps. And then I'm going to go back with my E25. Now that we've got our color down, our lines, we can see it. So now let's define them a little bit more. And you don't have to go back and add color to each strand. You can pick and choose and not go as dark. So now I'm going to go back with my E25, pulling this through. And then my E23. And now with my E21, just filling in the rest of the white area. Now I kind of went a little bit dark in some of those areas over here. I went a little thicker, so I'm going to take my E25 and I'm just going to thicken up some over here so that way it matches. I'm actually going to go back with my E29 over here. Just like I said, so it matches, so it looks the same on both sides. I'm going to go back with my E23 over here just a little bit, and a little bit over here. So now let's go ahead and do the back part of the ponytail. So I'm going to start with my E25. And then my E23. And now I'm going to go back with my E29. And then back with my E25. And then again with my E23. And now with my E21, do the one swipe over so I don't lose any of that texture. And then let's go back with E25, and I want to add that darkness right behind so it looks like it's going from behind. And then let's bring it out a little bit with the E23. All right, so there you have it. I hope you find that hair is a little bit more simpler, and go ahead and check below for all my color combinations that I'm using for everything listed here. And I'll also go ahead and link to my favorite color combinations that I have listed for different color combinations of hair. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next video. Have a wonderful day.